the thing is that we don't have anymore is we don't have locally owned shops and stores.
We're on a quest here in Canadian Tire to see if we can find any item, a single item, that has been made in Newfoundland.
Right. Famous blue Newfoundland plastic
Well,
plate.
I'll just see where it is made. China.
Well, everything is made in China, for God's sake.
All right.
Yeah, no. It's not going to be easy, is it?
Well, now this is, you know,
Gravel.
Look at that.
Bradford,
That's
Canada.
Ontario.
Ontario. Surely somebody could set up a gravel pit, but it is hard for me to buy dirt from somewhere else. Bark nuggets.
Ontario.
Well, maybe we don't have any bark nuggets left. I don't know. Surely we got a bit of spruce mold. Fredericton. New Brunswick is doing so well. This is the stuff made in Newfoundland, see? 100% fish product. It's excellent. It's an excellent product. And look, it is made on 614 Topsail Road. Look at that!
For the rocks, we're importing the rocks.
Yeah, but we're doing this. You know, here's a good product.
Over here. St. John's, North America's oldest city, is where I live and where I write. It's a wondrous place where we've recently had an explosion in literature.
Ladies and gentlemen, Lisa Moore.
Since that Giller nomination, I've been touring across Canada, and I'm finding that people are really curious about this place. They keep asking me, what does it mean to be a Newfoundlander? Newfoundland is a difficult place for me to try and explain to anyone, sometimes even to myself. I have a powerful attachment to this island. My ancestors are buried here. My family lives here. And the place is gorgeous and raw and unspeakably beautiful. This is where I belong. But there's something eating away at the very bone and sinew of the place. Some beast we keep trying to name. I'm finding it's getting harder to smile through the going away parties. I've been to 3 in the past couple of weeks. Everyone, it seems, is leaving because there's no work here. So I have to wonder, what will happen with my own children? Are they going to have to leave here one day too?
It's a rare thing for visitors to find their way to the tiny fishing villages of Newfoundland, this newest Canadian province, once known as Britain's oldest colony. This youngster will be a seagull when he grows up. The bird, that is. The other fellow will likely become a fisherman, like his dad. And they'll all meet again one day over a nice mess of herring. Here by the Newfoundland shore on Canada's east coast, there'll be plenty of fish for everyone.
I didn't take the fish from the goddamn water.
Well, who took it then? You and your goddamn people took it. You and your people took it.
No, I'm trying to do what I can.
Yes, you're doing shit on it. That's what you're doing. Yeah, you're doing nothing. You're doing nothing.
It was cod that brought us here, and cod that kept us going. We exported all over the world. Now the cod is gone, maybe forever. Fish plants are closed, communities shut down. Today our main export is our young people.
Perhaps because of being stuck out here on the edge, you know, we're like a canary in the coal mine, and so things happen to us first. You know what I mean? Or industrial destruction kind of happened to us, but you can't see it because it happened on the Grand Banks. I mean, our industry was wiped out totally. I mean, but we can't see it, so we still go along. So as the kinds of ways that we live, it seems to me, they affect us first because we live right on the edge. And Newfoundland is an island that's the archaic Indians got wiped out, the Beothics got wiped out. There's so many kinds of animals that got wiped out. It's a very thin little layer of subsoil there that we're all clinging on to, and if the conditions aren't exactly right, poof, we're gone.
What's difficult for any of us living here to figure out is why, in a place teeming with natural resources, we continue to be the poorest province in Canada. For years, we've been fighting for our fair share. That was, after all, the promise of Confederation. But it seems in order to get any attention at all, we have to push the battle right to the bitter edge, as our Premier Danny Williams did recently, to get us a better deal on our oil revenues.
And what do they think? We're fools? I mean, is that what the federal government thinks we are? That flag will be gone. And that flag will be gone.
We have this nagging feeling that being part of Canada might be what's holding us back. There are people here who have spent years agonizing over just that.
I was born a citizen of Newfoundland, and in 1949 I went to school one day, and the nuns told me that, O'Brien, when you come to school tomorrow, you're going to be a Canadian. First of all, I had no idea what that was, but I know that the next day that we started to get little things like cocoa malt and free orange juice and things like this. So we said, well, this must be a great way to be. So we became Canadians in that way.
Bud O'Brien was one of the many people hit directly when the cod fishery shut down. He and his family ran a fish plant on the southern shore where the Irish first settled hundreds of years ago. They had to close the fish plant and hundreds of people were out of work. In one decade, 70,000 people left our province, left to work in the factories of Ontario and the tar sands of Alberta.
Goes back to when we joined Canada. Our people never foresaw what was going to happen. Some people did, but they weren't listened to. And when we joined Canada, we surrendered our resources to the stewardship of Canada. And they did a very bad job. It was such a small little thing in Canada, the fishery, that no one paid any real attention to it.
Some fishermen, like Tom Best here in Petty Harbour, turned from cod to fishing crab. Crab brings in more money, but licenses are limited to a fortunate few.
Today, if it weren't for snow crab, the little bit of crab that's left in the ocean, a lot of these communities would just virtually be wiped right off the map.
So do you feel like the loss of the cod was the fault of the federal government?
Oh, absolutely. No question in my mind. I mean, Newfoundland is just one province in Canada, and our fisheries resources have become basically a trading block for the central Canada to use with other countries, European countries, in the interest of, I would say, Ontario and Quebec and some of the bigger provinces, and really don't depend on fisheries. But we're a fishing province. We've lived by the fishery for the last 400 years since early establishment and settlement by English and French and Irish fishermen, and we're not that important to the rest of Canada. You know, they keep telling us that we're getting enough form of transfer payments because of our economic situation. The reality of our situation is that if our resources were dealt with properly and had been managed properly by the government of Canada, we wouldn't be looking for handouts from anyone. We'd be just as powerful and just as rich as a nation.
Mm-hmm. Sometimes I feel like a fake Newfoundlander. I have no connection to the fishery. I'm a townie. I've never been in a dory. My family've never fished. I don't even like salt cod. But I do know that the closure of the cod fishery in the early 90s was the biggest blow we've had since Confederation. Fishermen didn't just lose their jobs, they lost a way of life. Communities lost their reason for being, and we lost heart. Without the cod fishery, Newfoundland went into an economic tailspin. We had to quickly reinvent ourselves to develop, among other things, a tourist industry.
And of course, these icebergs come all the way from Greenland. It's quite a long voyage. It takes about 2 to 3 years to get here. And on average, icebergs are anywhere between 10 to 15,000 years old.
We've always had a strong cultural identity, a strapping cultural nationalism that has sparked an incredible outburst of energy in the arts, in books, music, dance, and theater.
In 1579, the Newfoundland trade was swelling. Trinity Harbour bustled with 120 sail of ships annually.
Tourists are coming because they've heard about our unique culture. But they're looking for something that's like a fly in amber. It's the memory of a way of life we once had. It's as if we're afraid to look into the future, so we keep coming back to what connects us to the past.
It was early next morning, our vessel set sail.
Des Welch is a writer, musician, poet, and good friend of mine who spends most of his time in a small outport, not far from where his family settled when they arrived from Ireland generations ago.
My family weren't wealthy people. They were destitute there. They came here and they were destitute here. And I think the same would be for a lot of the West Country English that came here. They were destitute workers looking for some kind of income and employment where they could feed themselves. And I think once you got all those workers in one place, then the controlling forces that came at the time with them controlled all that too, because they had a nation of sheep.
The opposite side of that is this strong cultural heritage, which everybody talks about, which we're famous for, and in which there is this incredible pride and power, I think.
There's a richness in that, and there's a quality in that, but that too can become kind of nauseating after a while. When you get everyone coming in and the tourists come in and they all want to get on to see a whale and they all want to see a frickin' seal, or they want to, sing me a song. And when you're doing all that, when you're involved in that cultural industry, you look around, your neighbors are about ready to pack up and move because they can't survive anymore. And that's the big dilemma, and that's the big dilemma for me, I think, as a Newfoundlander. It's I make a living off the cultural industry in terms of my work as a writer. And I write about the things that, in some ways tear me apart, because I look at the change, and I've again seen the change in 30 years. And for me personally, I think that we've joined a country that has absolutely no interest in us whatsoever.
Whenever I dig into Newfoundland's history, I realize it's a history of loss, the most tragic being the First World War. When Britain asked us to fight at her side, we sent our youngest and brightest men. In one day, most of the Newfoundland regiment was wiped out in a battle they knew they could never win. Newfoundlanders have never gotten over the tragedy of Beaumont Hamel. Apart from the human cost, that war cost us millions of dollars. Then the Depression hit, and the price of fish fell on the world market. Without food or work, desperate people rioted in the streets, and Newfoundland was forced into bankruptcy. England sent over a boatload of civil servants to run our affairs. Our elected government was dissolved.
Don't vote Confederation until that's more prior to you.
Then, in 1949, we faced the toughest decision of our lives, whether to take back our independence or become part of Canada. Joey Smallwood led the campaign to bring us into the Canadian family, promising everything from baby bonus to old age pensions. He won by the skin of his teeth, by 4%.
We have reached an agreement for the entry of Newfoundland as a province of Canada.
With the stroke of a pen, we signed away our nation.
I think you could hear the actual...
The only country ever to do so voluntarily. We signed it away for a slice of bread. In exchange, we gave Canada control over our abundant resources, and they got us cheap.
Let's give 3 lusty cheers for Newfoundland. Hip, hip, hooray! Hip, hip, hooray! Hip, hip, hooray!
Almost half the population voted to take back their nation. My grandfather was one of the thousands who wore black armbands to mourn the loss of their country. That sense of betrayal and the ache of shattered dreams still hangs over this place like a thick fog. There's a lingering sense that we gave up something precious, something we didn't really appreciate at the time.
This poem was written the 50th anniversary of Newfoundland's joining Confederation We are North Americans now, the same as those Pablo Neruda wearied of, lulled into the same crimes, the same culture-starved wanderings. 50 years ago, we were lean and sensual. Our tongues touched whatever god we wanted. Before our glistening fish, salted for Portugal and Spain, became the currency of theater, before being slaughtered in wars far from the coves we wandered as children, we pressed wild berries to our lips and wiped the pungent juices from our mouths, the blood-red placenta of a healthy future. And now, the disease spreading, we weep together, collectively walking to every graveyard on every headland, and bury men and Rodneys, women and knowledge. We close the lodges and the halls, remove the steeples, abandon the headstones, haul the doors of the trap, leave rosary beads between stone and seaweed, leave saw blades to rust behind hills. And now, 50 years later, having done as we're told, we are left to celebrate.
I remember when I was 7 on a camping trip in rural Newfoundland, coming across Chris Brooks for the first time. He was doing a Punch and Judy puppet show. He has written passionately about everything, from Nicaragua to Newfoundland.
Actually, it was last summer I rode out in the middle of the harbor for Memorial Day with a rowboat. I had this literally like an out-of-body experience when it just really, you know, I sort of saw for a second what my life would be like and how I would feel as a Newfoundlander in the country of Newfoundland, in the towers. We had a government here, you know, that we elected, that ran the country. And I realized I would just feel so different. I would feel, I guess I'd feel in control of our destiny, even if I disagreed with what the government was doing, and you know, it would be ours. I don't feel that that I own the country. You know what I mean? I feel that I'm this little sort of appendage, misunderstood and marginalized appendage, stuck east somewhere. The Canadians seem to think they're doing such a marvelous charitable job of keeping us alive here.
Timing is everything in 1949. We were strategically in a very important position. They didn't want us to become American. They didn't want us to go back to being independent. They wanted, for whatever reason, for us to become part of Canada.
Mary Walsh is a Newfoundland treasure. She's a force of nature. Outrageous, irreverent, politically astute, and unstoppable. I first saw her on stage when I was just out of high school.
Half the people who are saying we must fight for independence are dead, and the other half are, have their livers shot. But that bullshit about fighting for independence, I mean, I can't tell you how many hours of my life I have wasted up till 4 o'clock in the fucking morning with some other arsehole saying we must fight for independence. The revolution's here, law.
No, but it's not, I don't mean independence from Canada. It more has to do with wanting to be able to control our resources and wanting, Canada to think of us as something other and then having our hand out and asking for, handouts all the time.
I know. It's just like, it's such a difficult question because, I mean, we have 7 members. That's what we have federally, 7. And Quebec has 125, and Ontario has 134. So what are you going to do as a Canadian Prime Minister or as a Canadian Minister of the government? Who are you going to side with? It's like, hit him again, he's got no brothers. I mean, it's just a very uneven, we're in a losing situation all the time. So how do we get the power is the question. But how do you? I mean, we don't have any power, and we have no fish, and we signed away our rights to the oil, and we signed away the nickel, and what else, what are we going to do? I mean, where do you go from there? Where do you go from the bottom?
Where do we go from here? Well, I know where I'm going. Almost 3,000 kilometers by sea to Iceland. I'm going to give a reading there. When I got the call, I couldn't believe my luck. I just about leapt through the phone. Like a lot of Newfoundlanders, I'm fascinated with Iceland. We have a lot in common. We're both islands stuck out in the middle of the Atlantic, made of hard rock and water. Both have survived on the cod for centuries. Until 1944, Iceland was a desperately poor place, just like Newfoundland. With a unanimous voice, they voted to separate from Denmark and become independent. Around the same time, we gave up our country and voted to join Canada. During the war, the British and the Americans set up bases in Iceland, and big money started to flow into the country. The Icelanders pulled together, something they're apparently good at, built up their fishery, educated their young people abroad, and were determined to run their own affairs so they'd never have to be as poor or dependent again. Perhaps at 40, I am just the right age to be removed from the romantic notions of Newfoundland. The only person I ever met from Iceland was a writer, and his first words to me were, "You Newfoundlanders must fight for your independence." He said we were crazy for ever having given up our nation in the first place. I thought it was a romantic notion. I didn't give it another thought. But now I can't stop thinking about it. When we joined Canada, we brought a lot to the table. But since that time, we've watched the wealth disappear and our province remain poor. It seems we keep making the same bad deals over and over. It makes me want to put a bullet in my head.
I'm just saying that, we made some decisions. They're not the decisions that, you could say there's something wrong with Ireland. For 400 years. Maybe, there was something wrong. Who knows? We just signed another deal with Voisey's Bay. Where nothing is being manufactured, everything is going out of the country. I don't know what to say. Is there something, do we get in front of a contract and our mind gets wiped clean and we rise like the phoenix from the ashes and say, this time it's really going to work. I'm going to sign now. It didn't work before, but this deal is really going to work. I don't know. I have no explanation for it. I don't know what it is.
Okay, let's find out.
I try not to sign my own deals. I try to get a mainlander to come in and sign my deal for me because I realize there's something obviously wrong somewhere with us.
It's good to get off the ship, get my feet on solid ground, and find out for myself what 60 years of independence has done for Iceland. I don't know what I was expecting to find here, but I somehow wasn't expecting it to be so sophisticated, so beautiful, so alive. When the Vikings first arrived here, they called the place Iceland to keep everybody else out. I don't see any great displays of wealth here. No big mansions, the houses look pretty much the same, plenty of small shops owned by Icelanders. Unlike the big box stores in Newfoundland where everything is shipped in and the money is shipped out, Iceland is investing in itself. Can you give me a hand for a second? And is this made here?
Yes. All made here.
Made in Iceland. Made in Iceland. These are made in Iceland, are they?
Yeah.
Made in Iceland. This afternoon I'm giving my reading at Nordic House. I'm feeling an awful dread in the pit of my stomach at the thought of appearing in front of such a literary crowd.
Lisa Moore's books, her collections of stories Open, was published to critical acclaims and was a finalist for the 2002 Giller Prize. It was a national bestseller. Lisa Moore, I welcome you to the Nordic House. It's a pleasure.
Thank you very much. It's a real pleasure to be here, and I'd like to thank the Nordic House for having me. On the shiny collar of her black tuxedo jacket, at the potluck after the wedding, Eleanor notices a ladybug. Culture here is like a living, breathing beast. I'm floored by the number of bookstores and art galleries. It's true that we publish a lot of books in Newfoundland, but they published 1,000 books here last year, and that's for a population of just 280,000 people. Hi, I just came from this exhibition out there. It's fantastic.
Is it? I haven't taken a look at it.
Hi, my name is Lisa Moore. I'm a writer from Canada. Yeah. I met you in Ottawa 2 years ago. I don't know if you remember. I just remember you gripping the arms of your chair and saying, Newfoundland should become independent.
Yeah, I remember. And you were talking about the fisheries and the...
Hallgrimur Helgason is the Icelander I met when I was touring Canada. He's an award-winning writer, and he's recently been made Artist of the Year. He's pushing the boundaries of writing with his tales of the wild, sexy underbelly of Reykjavik, and he's a fierce nationalist. I'm interested in what you think about independence.
I think it's vital. It's very important for a nation, for a country, and for people to feel independent. And it changed a lot for us, because when you're not independent, we were a colony of the Danish, the Danish king, and it was like, it was very comfortable. It was like living at your mom's. It's life is easy, but you're not a man. I mean, you don't have a real life. Deep down inside, we believed that we were independent. We were Icelanders. We never really believed that we were Danish or Danes.
You have the sagas, you have folk tales, you have 100% literacy rate here. Is that right?
Yeah. Or 99.
And is that a burden?
No, it's a writer's paradise. Iceland is a writer's paradise. It's the best country that you can have for being a writer, because people respect writers very much.
I hope that you will come to Newfoundland. I think you'd be surprised how like Iceland it is. We both come from a tradition where people are dragging a life out of the earth.
Yeah.
Thank you. I look forward to it. Thanks.
Oh, it's like a movie.
That one is, yeah. That's it's quite a sexy little book. You're not the only one who can write a sexy book. Icelanders are passionate about their books. Everyone talks about books, everyone argues about books. And they feel the same way about their independence. It's how they define themselves. By all accounts, they have created a successful country and are convinced they wouldn't have done it without becoming a nation, without breaking away from Denmark. I woke up this morning to the sound of drums outside my window. This is the event of the year. It's Independence Day, and the Icelanders are strutting their stuff. Bursting with confidence and pride, knowing that the decision they made 60 years ago is paying off. The celebrations go on into the night, although you'd never know it was night. There are as many bars here as we have back in Newfoundland. Maybe there's something about being on an island that drives you to drink. It's this book for teenagers. In North America, you'll be hard-pressed to find a teen who hasn't read it. I met Gudrun Goodman's daughter in a downtown bar. Icelanders are a friendly crowd. I think that must be an island thing, too. I was horrified, and I thought, oh, really? The light feels supernatural here. I could keep going all night. It's 2 o'clock in the morning when we leave the bar. The sun never sets in the summer, and it never rises in the winter. Hey! The next day, we speed up one of the steepest glaciers in Iceland. I'm hanging on for dear life. This is what draws tourists here. 300,000 of them last year. That's more than the number of people who live here. Icelanders are very clever about how they market this place, and unlike Newfoundland, they have millions to pump into doing just that. They've learned how to pamper the big spenders with the best hotels and restaurants. Tourism is now the second largest industry next to the fishery. I'm on the road to Thingvellir to meet Vigdis Finnbogadóttir, the ex-president. I've never met a president before. I'm nervous and I'm practicing her name. Finnbogadóttir. 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 How would you like me to address you?
I think you should say Vigdis, because everybody calls me Vigdis.
Vigdis has a house outside the city in an area Icelanders call the Golden Circle. The first woman elected head of state in the world is a single parent. As president, she stayed single, afraid if she married, people might think she was only mouthing her husband's ideas.
I didn't think of it when I was elected that I actually was the first in the world, and I'm very proud of the Icelanders to have had the guts to send this message out to the world that it is perfectly all right to make a woman a president.
She takes me to the site of Iceland's first parliament, the Althing.
We are the only nation in Europe that remember how we began.
Well, it's the oldest democracy in...
It's the oldest democracy in Europe, yes.
Norse settlers came here in 980. That long history of governing might explain part of Iceland's success, a sophisticated political tradition they were able to draw on when they became a country. Having a woman president for 17 years probably didn't hurt either.
These were very clever people. They realized that they would have to have some parliament, and they found this place.
Iceland's national treasure, the sagas, are a collection of ancient, rambling tales of bravery, drunkenness, and savagery. They present a dark side of the history of this country.
I have to hold you here. I have to take your arm here, because we women do that when we come to this place. If the girls had children out of wedlock, and it happened, they were taken here to the parliament and they were thrown into this pool. So it's called ever since the drowning pool. And I always try not to look at it when I walk around here, because its memory is so strong. I think that nationhood is beautiful when it's about love, when it's about memories, when it's about knowing who you are and where you belong, and recognizing yourself, for instance, in literature and music and the arts that are created by persons that belong to the same nationhood as you do.
In 1949, Newfoundland joined Canada. And it's about the same time that Iceland became independent, give or take.
44, 49.
And since then, of course, as you know, we've lost our fishery. We have we have the highest unemployment rate in Canada. Our literacy rate is 66%. Most of our resources, we're very rich in resources, in natural resources, richer even than Iceland. We have huge stores of oil on the coast, and there's nickel, and much of the wealth of that goes back to Ottawa, and from Ottawa we receive transfer payments, which is perceived by the company, by the country, as a sort of handout. And I'm interested in what independence did for Icelandic people, for individuals, how it forged an identity.
When the Icelanders got their independence, it had been prepared since 1918, and it's very good to prepare freedom for a long time, because then you know what you're doing. when finally Iceland got its independence, it was like a youngster saying, now I can. Everybody was working to do something for this country, to prove that it could stand on its own feet.
Og nú það að vera klart, stórstjörnurnar mikið fara fyrir sér, Big G.
Political will comes very much with information, with education. They had been in fetters for so many centuries. They could compare not to be free and to be free.
Big G, come on!
And they used every opportunity to build this country to what it is today. Who are we? What are our rights? We own this country. It's ours. And we own the fishery banks around our country. It's ours. Let's use that.
It seems like such a long time ago when cod was everywhere in Newfoundland. You could usually smell it before you saw it. Our fishermen used to say, that's the smell of money. In Iceland, they're now making lots of money from cod. It's their largest export. They treat it like gold. Oh my God.
We are very famous for good quality of saltfish. All the buyers, they ask always for fish from us. And why do we do that? Maybe we are the best in the world.
Because Iceland has its own international airline, the fish gets flown out fresh every day to high-priced restaurants in Europe and New York.
That's gorgeous.
Skinless.
Unlike the way we handle the fishery in Newfoundland, nothing here is wasted. Every part of the fish is sold. The few scraps of bone and skin left over are processed into cat food or fertilizer at the plant next door.
And the worms are taken out, if there are any worms.
There was no worms in that thing.
No.
Are you sure?
Yeah, I'm quite sure.
It didn't go through any machine.
Ironically, most of what Icelanders learned about fish, they learned from Newfoundland, beginning with Sir William Coker. Coker dedicated his life to the fishery and organized the first fishermen's union in the early 1900s.
I'm not saying there's anything wrong with us.
For Mary Walsh, Coker is an unsung hero that Newfoundland should have listened to.
When William Coker came up with 14 fishery reforms that he brought to the House of Assembly in Newfoundland, they were turned down, and the government of Iceland sent for them, and they instituted them, and they reformed their fishery, and they based their dollar on the cod, and they took the fishery seriously, which is something we never did. It's not anybody else's fault that we didn't do it. Why the fuck didn't we? I don't know why we didn't. Buddy was there with the 14 fucking reforms. Why not reform it? But everybody kept using like those pokey things to poke in fish. People were saying, people don't want fish with big pokey holes in them. People were going, I don't care about it. It's the way I fucking do it. You know, that's just the way it is.
Hello? Hi, Sigfus, it's Lisa. How are you? We're just on our way to your house now. We're a little bit behind schedule. Can you just quickly run over the instructions with me again so I'm certain about where we're going? The name of the farm. Klja. Klja. Is that right? Klja. Okay. All right. Well, thank you. We'll see you soon. Say for me again.
Klja.
Do you say it as if you've got a mouthful of brie cheese?
No, it's more like mushroom.
Good afternoon. Welcome to Iceland.
Thank you.
You come all the way from Newfoundland.
Yes. Thanks
Nice
for
to-
having me. This is fantastic.
Yes, I
so
like it very
beautiful.
much.
Sigfus Jonsson is restoring a farmhouse close to where his mother grew up. The place is a paradise where fishing and farming cooperatives once thrived. But life in rural Iceland is changing rapidly. These days, everyone wants to live in the city. Farms have been sold off for exorbitant prices and fish quotas gobbled up by bigger operators in Reykjavik. Sigfus spent 5 years in Newfoundland studying our fishery and teaching at our university. He knows his fish.
We manage our fishery with the national government of Iceland, but in Newfoundland you have Ottawa managing the resources in the sea.
Yes.
When it comes to policy making, then Newfoundlanders, do not have the power to make the decisions.
And do you think that's what went wrong?
No, I think that is a factor, because I think in the fishery you have to be very close to the fishery so you can understand it.
Okay.
In Europe, if you can use that as an example,
yes,
the bureaucrats in Brussels, they could not, in my opinion, manage properly, the fishing grounds of Iceland,
Icelanders value their fishery so much they went to war to defend it. In the famous Cod Wars, they rammed British trawlers, cut their trawl lines. After 2 years of getting beaten, the Brits finally went home in 1975, and since then no other nation has dared challenge Iceland. Newfoundland fought its own fish wars in 1995 against the Spanish, who were fishing undersized turbot off our shores. Commander-in-Chief for fish at the time was Federal Minister Brian Tobin, our former premier.
It was an environmental issue, because remember, at that stage we had stopped fishing. We weren't fighting for more for ourselves. We'd actually tied up our fleet, tied up hundreds of communities. We were simply saying that now that we've stopped to try and save the species, you should stop too. And if you won't stop, we will stop you.
But in Iceland, of course, they fought the Cod Wars and they really turned the British back, and that was the end of that. And they've maintained that, their fishery is safe and in good condition. So what's the difference?
I think the difference is that the resolve of a country to protect a resource can't be tied to a given point in time or a political party or a single individual. It has to be the resolve of a country. Even as you and I walk past these narrows, we know that out there, foreign vessels are once again, as they did in the 90s, they're abusing and raping the stock. So the question is, why are they doing that? And the only reason they could be doing it is that they doubt our resolve as a country to go and again fire across their bow, arrest their ships, and cut those nets. And so Canada has to learn the lesson of Iceland.
Unlike Newfoundland, Iceland is one of the few places left in the world that still has a cod fishery. In Newfoundland, our fishermen watch, in a quiet rage, the lights of foreign fishing trawlers off our Grand Banks, fishing still, overfishing, and we're not allowed to catch a fish to put on our table.
Since I've come here to Iceland, I've noticed that people seem to be doing really well. It seems like Iceland is going really well, that things are happening here economically and in every way. What have you done right? What are the decisions you've made that have worked?
I think if you go back, to the middle of the 20th century, in 1944, we decided to go for independence and manage our own affairs ourselves. If we had continued to be a Danish colony, all the brains from Iceland would have continued to live in Copenhagen, and we would have, SAS flying to Iceland, and we would have Danish banks, Danish insurance companies, etc., etc. So I think that is a major difference, that explains the sort of development that you have experienced over the last 50 years. Once you become a province of Canada, then you have to start to implement a Canadian fisheries policy. Then you have to let in all kinds of Canadian companies that come from the mainland and use Newfoundland just like a branch plant.
The woman rumored to be the next Prime Minister of Iceland isn't worried about being any country's branch plant. or creating employment, or a crushing debt load. Free from all that, Ingeborg Gisladottir has the luxury to think about the quality of life in her country.
So you know this sculptor?
Well, yes, it's called in Icelandic vernd or protection. This is a woman protecting a child, the next generation. He's carrying a ball. It might be the world, I don't know. But I think that is what we need. We need protection and caring. Maybe we're more talking about caring in that sense.
There's certainly a feeling of caring.
Yeah, that's a feeling of care.
Now, I was reading in a newspaper that a nun came to Iceland and was looking for, poverty, looking to help someone, and she went into a soup kitchen and there was nobody there. Is that true?
It sits very deep in the Icelandic people and in the Icelandic culture that it will not be tolerated that somebody are very rich while others are very poor. I mean, people are so connected here, they are related.
What do you think the future is for Iceland?
Young people, then they can go wherever they like in Europe. They can go study, working, living. So the vital issue is we have to have a quality of life that can not only match what they can get in other countries, but is better. This mentality of just doing things and maybe thinking that we are not 280,000 but 1 million. Sometimes it's like we have that idea. So I think it has something to do with the culture, with the identity, that there aren't that many hindrances. We see more opportunities, I think, than hindrances.
Since being here, I've come to realize that there are no neat comparisons to be made between Newfoundland and Iceland. Unemployment? Almost non-existent here. At home, almost 1/4 of our people are out of work. Education is sacred here. That's the real secret of their success. They boast the highest literacy rate in the world, while only 2/3 of our people are literate. And of course, they have their own language. There's tremendous wealth here, but the cost of living is high. So high they've come to Newfoundland to shop in the big box stores. Iceland benefits from being a member of the European Economic Area, it's true. But Newfoundland is part of Canada, and that should have its benefits, shouldn't it? The real irony is that Iceland doesn't have half the resources Newfoundland has. All Iceland really has is fish, hydro, and geothermal power. They're using that power to make cheap electricity to develop their industries and heat their homes.
It's amazing how big changes have been in the last century. It's incredible. To determine ourselves, it's very important. Just my father, he grew up in a house, we call it torf. You call it
sod.
Sod, yeah.
Grass on the
grass
roof.
on the roof and stones on the floor, and made of the ground. And he grew up in such a house. So I'm first generation in a modern house,
I have a 14-year-old and a 4-year-old.
Nice.
Big.
Yeah, I have a kind of a baby. She's 3-year-old, and then child, and then a teenager.
Yeah.
It's a challenge to combine this.
Yes. and to work as a CEO on top of it all. It's quite a big job you've got.
Now, I'm also chairman of the board of the National Telephone Company.
Ah.
Iceland isn't exporting its people like Newfoundland is. There's no brain drain here. In fact, they're having to import people to keep up with their growth.
When people get educated, they leave for jobs
Yeah.
because we have a very high unemployment rate.
Yeah.
But you you went away. You went abroad
Yeah.
to go to school. Did you?
Yes, I went to California, to San Francisco for 2 years.
And you came back.
Yes, I sometimes wondered why I came back, because I liked it very much living there. It's the weather obviously nicer, and I could get a nice job, and I liked it very much in California. And
I guess you
I miss it from time to time.
So
But,
why did you come back?
I think it's because it's here we belong. I was there with my husband. He was very insisted on going back, and we have our family here and friends, and the family connections are very strong here.
Mm-hmm.
In a way, I wanted to see development go on further and help in that.
Absolutely nothing is wasted here in Iceland. In fact, we're soaking in the effluent from the hydrothermal plant. It's rumored to have healing powers. The last time I saw Gudrun, we were on a glacier, and that was amazing. But nothing beats these soothing waters.
I sort of had the feeling that this is like the hippest new spot in Europe. Do you think that's true?
Well, I guess the image has been already made for us. I'm not saying, yes, I mean, maybe we were cool and trendy before, and then we got the eyes of the world, you know, people from cool hip magazines from Europe come here in the United States, and, you know, and sort of Björk and all these cool things. And of course you have to live it. What characterizes Iceland to me is like all these things, all these big truths that we do read a lot. And we are so fantastic, and we know everything about our sagas, and we can speak our language. We can read the sagas from 1,000 years ago. I sort of think the myth is very strong, but I'm not saying it's not true, but it's just, I'm sort of reluctant to believe that it's as true as it appears to be, basically.
Well, I think it's interesting that there is a myth. When you have a mythology, you begin to live it.
Oh, absolutely,
Work toward it.
Yes, I think that's the sort of a master plan, if it ever was a plan. Because, I mean, believing that you're so great and special and wonderful, of course, I mean, you'll act this way and the response to you will be the same. So, of course, as a whole nation, if you do this, it's brilliant. And it actually works, because if you see Icelandic politicians going to these huge international meetings, they feel like equals. So how wonderful. And they sort of, I guess they sort of convince others that they are.
I think Newfoundlanders are very proud of being Newfoundlanders too, but it's a different kind of pride. It doesn't have to do with being an independent nation. It's not built on that.
Okay.
Both Iceland and Newfoundland are these rugged, windswept, you know, sort of gorgeous but harsh environments where people have really eked a living out of a hostile environment, and there's a kind of pride that comes with that. That's something we share.
This is where Jules Verne set his book, Journey to the Center of the Earth. It really feels like the center of the Earth. Iceland feels like the center of the Earth. It's an incredible place. People here know who they are. They know where they're going. For them, independence is not just a political reality. It's a state of mind. All through this trip, I couldn't help think how things might have been different if Newfoundland had taken the independent route. But we were once an independent country, and things were difficult for us. I guess the question I have leaving Iceland is, can Newfoundland ever find its place in Canada like Iceland has found its place in the world?
We've got to be responsible for ourselves. We've got to be assertive. We've got to be insistent. What we can't do is sit down and say, it's out of my power, it's out of my hands. Somebody else has control, not me. It's not my fault, because then we're giving ourselves a big excuse for our circumstance and a big reason to sit on the sidelines and watch the world pass us by.
Even our own people tend to not see the importance of keeping that sense of nation, even within the Confederation of Canada. Forget the government, forget everything else. We as a people have to say, hold it. That's enough now, you know. we've been kicked too long. This is how it's going to be, you know.
Kicked too long and kicked too hard, and now we're kicking back. Or at least our Premier Danny Williams is kicking back. He stood up to Canada in a bold move that may finally break our agonizing history of bad deals.
We got it. We got it. We got it.
As a friend said to me, we're not looking to get out of Confederation. We're looking to get in.
This could be the final breath. This is life and death. This is hard rock and water. Out here where the wind has turned and the towers are burning, and there is no returning. We defy the centuries. We live the oldest of intensities, laughter and misery. Out here between time and tide, between tears and elation, lies a secret nation. There lies a secret nation.